and welcome. Thank you for popping in. If you are new here, please like and subscribe for me. If you find this content helpful, hit that notification bell so that you don't miss out on the next video. Comment below with anything that you need help with or topics you'd like me to cover. Or head to my website, consultingninja.tech, to check out the resources section I've put together there. With that out of the way, we're going to get into some more TypeScript. I'm going to cover two things. Before we get to those, I want to point out, if you're brand new to TypeScript, I have a beginner video. I'll link in the description to that. And if you want the source code for this project, that's available in my GitHub repository, and I will link in the description for that as well. So today we're doing Typeguards and Typemaps. And when I say Typemap, I am not referring to TypeScript's mapped types, which essentially takes the keys from a type and calls them something else into a different type. I'm talking about a function that takes one type and returns another. So I have this little funny example here. It just says, please choose a sign-in method. It's just a form. If they fill it out, it accepts their values as being a user and enters those into our application. Otherwise, there's this use third party button, and that simulates grabbing a user from some sort of third party, either from authentication, Google authentication, Facebook, or some other thing, or our database. And in my own experience, it's frequently been the case that the data from the backend does not match up, even though it should, to the data from the front. And this is how we handle that, Typeguards and Typemaps. Our JSX looks like this. I'm still using the view and controller method. So here we have the view. The first thing I'm doing is firing up the controller and destructuring out the pieces I'm going to use so that I don't need to use the dot syntax everywhere. And then we're just rendering out that basic form. If they fill out the form or click the button, that goes away and it's just replaced by the information that would take its place. Inside of our controller is where all of the TypeScript lives. We still have our app controller state being defined here. And then we have two pieces of state, an authentication method, which is just a string, a user, which is the app user, and then a handle sign-in that takes an optional form and an optional button. And then we're returning our app state here. The bottom is just the interfaces that I've defined here. One is the app state. That's what controller returns. And in that is our state, which is an app user, an authentication method, which is that string, and then our handle sign-in function, which takes the form event or mouse event. Here is our app user. It's just a first name of type string, a last name of type string, an email of type string. And then here's our database user. And you can see this is where things get sticky for us, because in our database, our name is two concatenated values or null, and our email is either a string or null. The concatenation thing is something I'm making up. I'm saying theoretically you went and looked at your database, and your database stores the first name together with last name, but your application is expecting first name separate from last name. So how do we deal with that? We deal with that using a type map. Now let's go up here and just create this little function called fetch user. And this is just an anonymous function that's going to return a DB user. And so let's just return an object with a name. And as I said, we looked in our database and seen that our database is storing the name like that. Email, let's do bob@gmail.com. So there we have our function returning this fake user. Now, how do we deal with the fact that this does not match up with what our app is expecting? That would be our map. So again, I'm not talking about map types, I'm talking about a function. So let's define that. So let's say const, and we're going to be specific here, db to app, right? We're taking a database user and converting it to a, user, and converting it to a app user. And this is a db user, and then we're going to be returning an app user. And that takes the user. And here is where the cool stuff can start to happen. So let's pull out all of the information that we need from our database user. So let's just do something like this. Let first, and we're just going to split up the name if it is there. Whoops, not what I wanted. Split. And we're splitting by comma. Whoops, I don't know where I got item from, as user. And we're pulling out the first piece of that split for first name, and then let last equal user.name. If it's there, split by comma and grab the second piece. And let email equal to user.email. Now, inside of our return, we return the format that we're wanting. So first name, and this would be first. If the first is there, we use it. Otherwise, we set it to empty string. If the last is there, we use last. Otherwise, empty string. And email. If the email is there, we use email. Otherwise, empty string. So that's pretty cool. Now we have this function that is taking our database user and converting it into an app user. Now, it's been my own experience that I've had to use this kind of stuff extensively in the work that I've done. Maybe I've just had bad luck, but maybe not. So hopefully you guys find this helpful so that you can handle that problem in your own project. So let's take this one step further though, and let's define a type guard. And what a type guard is, it's essentially similar except for, well, it's a function that takes a parameter and essentially filters out anything that doesn't meet your criteria. So here, let's do a const, and let's call this string guard. And, string guard. And we are taking a thing, which is going to be of type string or undefined or null. Thank you, database designers. We sure appreciate that. And let's give this fancy little TypeScript thing here. So we'll say thing is string. And then we're just going to return this bracket and say return type of thing equal to string. Sweet. So we now have this function that takes a thing, which could be a string, undefined, or null, and then returns it only if it's a string, only if the type of it is string. So how we can use this, and let's label these. Typeguard, Typemap. So how we can make use of this immediately in our little example here is right here, in between here, let's make a couple of if statements. Let's say string guard, and let's pass it first. And we want to make sure that if it's not. So if it's not, then we can say first equal to, and you could put a default value here if you have the need for that, or just the empty string. In this case, React, you can't have undefined nulls in your inputs, so this is a good way of handling those as well. And last equal to empty string. And then the last one, if email, then we're going to assign email to the empty string. And you'll see what's cool here is now we can just get rid of all of this extra, kind of clean this up and make this look a little bit nicer. And then all of the logic is laid out step by step for people to follow. So pretty cool, right? We're taking our improperly formatted data, we're converting it to the format we want, and we're running it all through a type guard so that we know for sure that this is going to be a string. It's not going to be undefined, it's not going to be null, it's going to be a string. It might be the empty string, but that is okay for our application. So pretty cool, huh? Hopefully you guys have followed this so far without any problems. If you have, give me that thumbs up. Comment below with what you're thinking. Let's just plug this inside of our handle sign in. Let's just do an if button. Then what we want to do is set the authentication method to whatever you want to call this. Let's just say like third party. And then we want to create and get that user, existing user, and let's just do our pretend fetch. So now we have that database user, right? And then to convert it, all you do is just wrap that in that mapper that we created, which is pretty sweet if you ask me. Works really nice. So now we've just taken our database user and you just plop it straight into your map. And now when we hover, we can see that that's properly an app user now. And so we could just set our user to be existing user. Well, let's give that a save and open up our browser and then just say use third party. And you can see, ta-da, pretty cool. So we took our incorrect type, we used a Typemap combined with a Typeguard to make sure everything was properly formatted, and then we just populated those values into our application, and here we're just rendering out those results. So I've used this extensively. I don't like to make these videos too long, so there is the basics for Typeguards and Typemaps. I hope that you guys have found this helpful. If you did, don't forget to give me that like and subscribe, and a comment below with what you guys thought about this video. Until next time, you guys have a great day.